To many Africans, immigration is a problem, and to many Europeans, Africans are an immigration problem. I'm Dr. PK, and today we will be talking about something that is obvious, but yet subtle in so many ways, and that is immigration with respect to African countries. Today, actually this morning, should I say, probably yesterday, late in the evening, there was an article made out by Deutsche Welle, which is a Deutsche German newspaper or publication firm here in Germany. And it marked the title of Why Germany Struggles to Attract African Skilled Workers. And in that article, it basically tried to give or paint a picture of the different nuances that Africans and also the German government is trying to achieve, as opposed to what the Africans in totality of, or as a portion of the total immigration quota that Germany and amongst others European countries is trying to achieve. Now let's throw out some stats. There is, according to the German statistics, Germany currently needs roughly 400,000 workers per year to ensure that in the next 10 years, if not 15 years, they don't run into a workforce deficit, which essentially means you are no longer able to sustain a GDP growth because you just don't have people working. That's essentially what that means. Now, let's break this down. Out of that 400,000, do you know how many Africans actually got their visa approved so that they can come work in Germany? The stat shows, and it depends on which source you use, but there were roughly only about 5,000 applications approved for Africans across the whole African continent to come and work here in Germany. Now, to some people, they might say, oh, that's a good number. But if you were to run the maths, it is 0.04% of the quota on a yearly basis. Not 4%, not 40%, 0.04. So one needs to kind of think about, why is that? Why is it that Germany supposedly, and Europe in general, being the land of opportunity, being the land of where work-life balance is at the epicenter, being the land of culture, being the land of social reforms and benefits, why is it that Africans struggle to come to Germany? Now, in this article, it brings about specific aspects, which I think I have experienced, whereby imagine you are out of university, or even sometimes you're already a working person, and you see an opportunity on the internet. You are from Kenya, Nairobi, or you are from Accra, Ghana, and you see an opportunity to basically make a new life for you and eventually your family, and you apply. And this is now in Germany. You apply and you get hit with all sorts of requirements, which you feel like, okay, one of them is potentially your education, your degrees or diplomas. But all of a sudden you're hit with a gap. You're hit with a gap of not knowing where to go, or too expensive to get your degrees ratified or translated, or all of a sudden you get hit with a network of charges that the embassy itself that is taking your application has allowed to happen through various contractors that supposedly are supplying you with kind of passport or translation or even language. All of a sudden, what's supposed to be a straightforward application becomes a budgeting nightmare, where some people had to sell houses, some people had to sell things from their parents that they've had for decades. Some people had to save up a year worth of savings just to show that they're eligible to apply. And on top of that, in the same article, it shows that the top 5 countries who have the highest rejection rate in Germany, and that is Nigeria, Senegal, Ghana, Mali, Guinea. Cameroon is 6. Now, that doesn't even make sense because those 5 countries that I've just read have got the highest when it comes to tech. I can only speak about tech, but fintech and tech in general have got the highest scientific or technical field graduates out of most African countries. So, how is it that they also have the highest rejection rates when it comes to being able to apply for a deficit that is clearly known to the German government, the Bundestag, and all the other, specifically the embassies in those countries? For me, that is crazy. So let me try and repeat what I just said. You say you need people. There's countries that consistently produce, and we know this because there are Silicon Valleys, typical Silicon Valleys being popped out in most of those countries: Nigeria, Senegal, Ghana, Kenya, Guinea, Burkina Faso, consistently. If you want to Google it and see how many fintech and just overall tech companies are actually popping out in those countries. So there are people who can work. There are people who can do the job. And there are people who are willing to apply. And yet the rejection rate is so high. And there's a claim that it's got to do with language. There's a claim that's got to do with bureaucracy. There's a claim that's got to do with just overall hurdle of the process. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I think this is a political game. I think Germany and a lot of European countries are playing a very dangerous game. I'm here in Germany. I know that foreigners can do the job. I know. I also know that it's not an integration issue. A lot of foreigners want to integrate. A lot of the foreigners do integrate. But it's just the lack of will to make it easy. I think a lot of European countries are still stuck with the notion that to be Austrian or to be German is to be devoid of diversity. And it could be nothing further from the truth, because if you were to look at history, German history, Austrian history, a lot of these guys were small little kingdoms, and every single one of them had their own diverse way of doing things. Throughout the Francophone and Germanic states, they were very different. Very different. And to think that one now needs to be kind of united in this uniform way and protected at all costs and give a perception that you need someone, but you're actually saying you need someone to look exactly like me before I accept him or her, is denying your very history of diversity. So I've got a couple of points that I want to put together, because it does relate to tech. It does relate to you and I. If you're listening to this and you're wondering, maybe you're thinking about applying to Germany or Austria or Sweden or Netherlands or France, whatever the case may be. And there's a notion that there's a language barrier. There's a notion that it's about, oh no, there's people just don't want you here. I've been here for 5 years. I don't buy it. I think, of course, culture is different. The system is different. But it's got to do with the duality of a government that is faced with two different pressures of this notion of keeping what is German, and this notion that we need outside help, but we would like them to be looking as German as possible. And that is the key. I do believe that the fact that an African professional, struggles for months and spends almost his life savings to get a visa to come to Europe, and usually that money is spent on all the process and all the legalization of his documents, which the embassy knows full well of these costs and still allows it, is because there's an underlying battle with these European countries when it comes to identity and when it comes to reality. In terms of reality is that you need people outside to help you, and your identity is not what you think it is. Of course, I might be speaking out of terms, but I read history. Read history. You will see the German people is not a unison people. That's nonsense. The French people is not a unison people. Austrian, Netherlands, and so forth and so forth. They were vastly different across the land. And that is what made them strong, because they could come in and bring different ideas. And two, that's what brought up about the Wirtschaftsmiracle, the miraculous economy of post World War II that got Germany to where it was maybe 10 years ago in terms of being a superpower in manufacturing. That was because of diversity, not because of uniformity. So I've got, if you're an African person or if you're a German person watching this, vielen Dank, sehr good. But if you're an African person watching this, I want to encourage you to say, don't give up. You're not selling out on your country by trying to go abroad and come to Germany. If you want to know more about my process and what I had to do and how I integrated, you can contact me and we can definitely have a chat on this. But you're not wrong. You're not wrong in wanting a better life for your family. Our governments have failed so many times, our African governments, and there's nothing wrong in wanting to leverage your skills for the sake of your community. That's what immigration is. It's a leverage. But it's also not something you should take to heart, thinking that Germany, for example, is a country that doesn't want you. The people would embrace you with open arms. Of course, the language is a problem, but language is a problem everywhere. You go to Kenya, you have to learn some form of Swahili. It is obvious. You go to KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa, you have to learn some form of Zulu. You go to Ventersdorp in South Africa, you have to learn some form of Afrikaans. That is just how life is. So it's not a European thing, it's not an African thing, it's just a life thing. That's potentially the biggest one regarding language. The second thing regarding kind of the overall integration, one needs to just remember that I'm a guest. Of course, I am feeling that I'm becoming more and more German in different ways. My family definitely is starting to speak with the verb at the end, even in English. By the way, if you don't get that inside joke, you probably haven't learned German. But if you have, you know exactly what I mean. But in terms of integration, one needs to always remember that the mindset of an African is always to defer. The mindset of someone who comes from a poor family, comes from a family, a state of need, comes from a state of want, comes from a state of desperation, is to defer. What do I mean by defer? I mean, it's always to not be the antagonist. It's always to complain silently. It's always to say, yes, sir, yes, sir. And unfortunately, that is a detriment that I've seen in my life that I had to shake off. Why am I saying this? Because fundamentally, one of the ways to integrate in a society like Germany and so many other European countries and potentially in North America is to understand that when you were given your paperwork to come here, you were given them on merit. Whether it is an asylum seeker, whether it is a skilled worker, whether it is a student, you were given to it on merit. Now, of course, if you did your own things, si tu as fait certaines choses là, c'est pas dedans. Mais But if you were given to, you provided your paperwork and it was legit and it got approved, you are here on merit. So you got to shake off that sense that you don't belong. Because oftentimes, as I say always, the fear of not belonging is the biggest enemy to self-discovery. You don't get to see yourself, your true self, if you don't feel like you don't belong in the room. So that is my second and final advice on this topic. I think there is a duality that is happening behind closed doors in front of the media regarding the German desperation and yet the German fight for self-determination and identity, especially when it comes to these far-right politics that wants to keep this ideal identity of what a German person looks like or is, and yet is a fallacy when it comes to history, which Germany fundamentally was as diverse as any country when it came to innovation. So that is just a topic on immigration, on tech, on bringing us closer to just having a strong mindset and discussing these issues openly. Thank you so much again for listening. Thank you so much for watching the show. I'm really appreciative of everybody who has subscribed. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe. I don't say it enough, but I'm saying it now. We are definitely on the verge of, consistently bringing out content that hopefully is provocative enough and makes you think a little bit different on how you can add to the society around you. I'm Dr. PK. This is MoloMolo. Until next time. Ciao.